My name's Hannah Brooks, 28, and I thought I knew my family. Last summer at my brother's birthday party in our backyard in Raleigh, North Carolina, everything changed. I'd spent weeks planning it. String lights, BBQ ribs, the works, because he wanted it big. I even paid for most of it. My gift, a sleek vintage watch engraved with a note that I'd wired $2,500 to cover his rent for 3 months. I handed it to him, heart pounding, hoping he'd see how much I cared. He opened the box, smirked, and looked around at our family. Trying to compensate for not being needed around here, he said. The whole yard, my mom, dad, aunt, cousins, burst out laughing. My face burned. That watch wasn't just a gift. It was me bailing him out again. I'd been their bank for years, and this was my thanks. I snatched the watch back. My voice steady, but ice cold. Good to know. I turned to leave, their laughter still ringing in my ears. My mom called after me, "Don't do this." My dad shouted, "You're overreacting." But I kept walking. Later, they were all yelling, "Hannah, please listen to us." I didn't stop. That night was just the start. Things got uglier, and I had to make a choice that flipped my life upside down. Stick around to see how it all unraveled. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to find out how I turned my family's betrayal into my freedom. You won't want to miss this. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. There were missed calls from Mom Diane Brooks, Dad Gary Brooks, and even my Aunt Ellen. Text messages piled up, each one sharper than the last, urging me to calm down and come back to talk. I sat on my couch staring at the screen still raw from my brother's birthday party. His words calling my gift a pathetic attempt to feel needed cut deeper than I'd expected. But it wasn't just the laughter from Mom, Dad, and the rest of the family that stung. It was realizing they'd been taking me for granted all along. For 2 years, I'd been their safety net, pouring my savings into their lives without a single thank you. As a freelance software engineer, I made decent money enough to cover my own rent and still have some left over. So when Mom called 2 years ago, voice shaky, saying they were behind on the house payment, I didn't hesitate. $1,500 a month wired straight to their landlord, no questions asked. It wasn't just rent, though. I paid the electric bill when it spiked in winter, $300 to keep their heat on. Water bills, too, when they forgot to budget another $100 here and there. And Dad's old pickup truck, I shelled out $1,500 for a new transmission last spring because he swore he needed it to look for work. He never did. My brother Tyler Brooks was the worst. At 22, he called himself a streamer, spending hours in his room, yelling at video games, chasing followers that never came. His setup microphone lights, a fancy chair, cost me $900 when he begged for it, claiming it'd launch his career. 2 years later, he had less than 50 subscribers and no job. I kept thinking he'd grow up, get a gig, anything to stop leaning on me. Instead, he'd roll his eyes when I brought up work like I was nagging him for fun. Mom and Dad backed him up, saying he was figuring it out and needed time. Time I was paying for. Sitting there scrolling through their messages, I felt like an idiot. Every month, I'd juggled my own bills to cover theirs, skipping dinners out, putting off a new laptop for work, all so they could coast. I wasn't their daughter or sister. I was their bank account. Mom's texts were the same old script, "We're family, we stick together." Dad chimed in, claiming my storming out was embarrassing and I owed them an apology. My aunt even threw in a guilt trip, saying I was tearing everyone apart. Not one of them mentioned the $2,500 I'd wired for my brother's rent or the watch I'd engraved as a gesture of care. Not one of them said sorry. The worst part, I'd never asked for much, just a nod, a thank you, some sign they saw me as more than a paycheck. But last night, when my brother tossed my gift aside and the whole family laughed, it hit me. They didn't just take my money. They didn't respect me. I'd spent years keeping their heads above water, and they couldn't even pretend to care. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mom, probably begging me to fix this. I tossed it on the couch, my chest tight with a mix of anger and betrayal. For the first time, I wondered if I'd been wrong to keep helping them. Maybe I wasn't saving them. Maybe I was enabling them. My brother's smug face, mom's fake tears, dad's empty promises they weren't my responsibility. I'd given them everything, and they'd given me nothing but mockery. As I sat there, the weight of those 2 years pressed down on me. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew I couldn't keep being their doormat. A week later, I was still reeling from the realization that my family saw me as their personal ATM, but what came next was worse. My phone had been quiet for a few days after the barrage of texts following my brother's birthday party, so I thought maybe they'd let it go. I was wrong. Mom called me midweek, her voice soft but insistent, asking me to come to a family meeting at their house. "We need to sort this out," she said, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I agreed mostly because I wanted to hear them out, hoping for an apology that never came. The meeting was in their living room, the same one I'd helped keep theirs by paying their rent for 2 years. Mom sat on the couch, hands folded, eyes glistening like she'd rehearsed her tears. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, looking at me like I'd betrayed them. My aunt, who'd driven in from out of town, perched on an armchair, nodding along to everything Mom said. My brother slouched in a corner, scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. The air felt heavy, like they'd planned every word to pull me back in. Mom started, her voice low and guilt-laced. "We're a family, and families don't walk out on each other," she said, glancing at me like I'd committed a crime. She brought up Dad's supposed back pain, claiming it kept him from working, even though I knew he'd been fine enough to go fishing last month. "They needed my help," she said, "because times were tough, and I was the only one who could save us." Dad jumped in, his tone sharp. "You can't just stop helping us because of one argument," he said, calling my reaction selfish. My aunt chimed in softer, trying to play peacemaker. "Let's not fight," she urged, but it felt hollow. She didn't even know the half of what I'd done for them. Then my brother spoke, not looking up from his phone. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," he said, like his public mockery of my gift was just a joke. That's when I saw it, a notification on my phone from a mutual friend linking to a post on social media. My brother had shared a rant calling me stingy and too good for the family, claiming I'd abandoned them over a stupid misunderstanding. The post had a dozen likes, mostly from his gamer friends, and a few comments from people I barely knew, agreeing I was cold. My stomach twisted. He wasn't just dismissing me at home. He was dragging my name online. I sat there gripping my coffee mug, trying to stay calm. "I've paid your rent, your bills, your truck repairs," I said, my voice steady but firm. 2 years, and you call me selfish." Mom's eyes widened like she hadn't expected me to push back. Dad scoffed, saying I was throwing it in their faces. My aunt suggested we compromise, but I could tell she meant I should keep paying. My brother just shrugged, muttering about how I was overdramatic. No one apologized. No one acknowledged the thousands I'd spent to keep them afloat. That evening, I met Mark at a diner downtown, a little place with sticky tables and strong coffee. Mark, my friend since college, had always been the one I turned to when things got messy. I told him about the meeting, the post, the guilt tripping. He leaned back, shaking his head. "They're using you, Hannah," he said bluntly. "You're not their daughter right now, you're their wallet. You gotta set boundaries, or they'll bleed you dry." He told me about his cousin who'd cut off his own family after years of similar nonsense, and how it freed him to live his life. "You don't owe them your savings," Mark said. "Protect yourself." His words hit hard. I'd been wrestling with guilt, wondering if I was wrong to pull back. But hearing Mark lay it out so plainly made it clear my family wasn't sorry, they were desperate to keep me in line. Back at home, I stared at another text from Mom begging me to think of the family. I typed out a reply, short and final. "I'm done paying for you." I hit send, my heart racing but resolute. Their replies came fast. Mom's pleas, Dad's anger, my brother's silence. But I didn't budge. For the first time, I felt the weight lifting even as their anger grew. By late summer, their problems got worse. I'd sent that final text a week ago telling Mom, Dad, and my brother I was done paying their way. I braced myself for their reaction, and it came fast. I was at my apartment sorting through work emails when Mom called, her voice trembling like she was on the verge of tears. "How can you do this to us?" she asked, as if I'd pulled the rug out from under them. I reminded her I'd covered their rent, their bills, their truck repairs for years. Her response: a long, dramatic sob followed by, "You're breaking this family apart." Dad got on the line, his tone sharp and accusing. "You think you're better than us now," he snapped, claiming I was abandoning my duty. My brother didn't say a word, just silence, which somehow felt worse than his usual snark. I hung up my hands shaking, but I didn't back down. Their words stung, but I was done letting guilt pull me back. I'd spent too long being their safety net, and their reaction only proved they saw me as nothing more. Mom's tears weren't about love, they were about losing their lifeline. Dad's anger was about control, not care. And my brother's silence. That was him realizing his free ride was over. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger, like I was finally waking up from a bad dream. A few days later, my boyfriend Nathan invited me to his family's place, a cozy house on the outskirts of Raleigh. It was a different world. Nathan's dad, Richard, was in his garage tinkering with an old Mustang he'd been restoring for years. He waved me over, handing me a wrench and asking if I'd ever changed a spark plug. I hadn't, but I jumped in grease on my hands listening as he explained the engine like it was a story. There was no judgment, no expectations, just a guy sharing his passion. We spent hours swapping out parts, laughing when a bolt got stuck, and I felt something I hadn't in years included. That weekend, Nathan's mom, Linda, invited me for dinner. Their dining room was warm with mismatched chairs and a table full of food: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans she'd grown herself. Linda asked about my work, genuinely curious about my coding projects, and listened without interrupting. Nathan's brother Jason teased me about my lack of car knowledge, but it was light-friendly, nothing like the venom I'd gotten at home. They didn't ask me for a dime or hint at needing help. Instead, they passed me the gravy and treated me like I belonged. I caught myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. Back at my apartment, I got another call from Mom. She was crying again, saying they'd gotten a late notice on the house payment. Just one more month, she pleaded, as if I hadn't already given them years. Dad texted, calling me heartless for leaving them to drown. My brother still said nothing, probably glued to his streaming setup I'd paid for. I didn't respond. Their desperation was real, but so was my resolve. I wasn't their bank anymore. Spending time with Nathan's family showed me what I'd been missing. Richard didn't just let me help with the car, he thanked me, saying I'd made the job easier. Linda sent me home with leftovers, insisting I take the best pieces. Jason even offered to show me how to check my own car's oil next time. They didn't need me to fix their lives. They just wanted me there. It was such a stark contrast to my own family, where every interaction came with a price tag. I started joining Nathan's family more often, helping Richard in the garage, chatting with Linda over coffee, joking with Jason about his bad taste in music. Each moment felt like a step away from the weight of my family's demands. I wasn't just a paycheck to these people. I was someone they valued. For the first time, I saw what family could be: not a burden, but a choice. My own family's anger was still there, burning through their messages, but I was starting to feel free. Their problems weren't mine to solve anymore. In mid-September, I got a desperate call. Mom's voice was frantic, nothing like her usual calculated tears. "The bank's going to take the house," she said, her words tumbling out. They were $9,000 behind on the mortgage, and a foreclosure notice had come in the mail. She didn't ask for help outright. She just let the panic hang there, expecting me to jump in like always. I listened, my thumb hovering over the end call button, and said nothing. For years, I'd bailed them out: rent bills, my brother's streaming setup, but I was done. Her silence on the other end felt like a challenge, but I wasn't taking the bait. A day later, my brother messaged me. No apology, no acknowledgement of how he'd trashed me online or mocked me at his birthday. Just a blunt request. Need $500 for new streaming gear. It'll help me go pro. I stared at the words, almost laughing at his nerve. He hadn't worked a day in his life, still chasing a fantasy I'd funded for years. I opened my banking app, sent him $1 and typed, "More than I owe." I hit send, feeling a sharp satisfaction. Let him figure out what to do with that. His reply was instant, a string of angry emojis, no words. I didn't care. He'd made his bed, and I wasn't tucking him in anymore. That weekend, Nathan invited me to a BBQ at his family's place. Their backyard was alive with chatter, the smell of grilled burgers and charcoal in the air. Richard flipped patties on the grill, joking about his secret sauce that was just store-bought ketchup mixed with garlic. Linda set out plates of potato salad and coleslaw, insisting I try her homemade pickles. Nathan's brother Jason challenged me to a cornhole game, laughing when I missed every shot. It wasn't just the food or the games, it was how they treated me. Richard asked my opinion on a carburetor he was installing, like my input mattered. Linda shared stories about Nathan's childhood, pulling me into their world. Jason teased me, but it was warm, not cutting. I felt like I belonged, no strings attached. At the BBQ, I noticed how Nathan's family worked together. Richard and Jason argued over grill techniques, but it was playful, not bitter. Linda didn't demand anything, she just handed me a drink and asked about my week. They didn't know the details of my family's mess, but Nathan squeezed my hand under the table like he knew I needed it. I looked around at their laughter, their ease, and felt something settle in me. This was what family could be, people who valued you, not what you could give them. My phone buzzed, plea from Mom this time, mentioning a meeting with the bank. I didn't reply. I'd made my choice, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting myself. My brother's $1 transfer sat unanswered, his silence louder than any argument. The foreclosure notice wasn't my fault, they'd had years to get their act together, and I'd given them more than enough. I put my phone on silent and rejoined the BBQ, tossing a cornhole bag and laughing when it landed nowhere near the board. For the first time in months, I felt light, like I was finally free of their weight. Back home, another text from Mom lit up my phone. We're losing everything, she wrote, detailing how the bank had given them 30 days to pay up or move out. She mentioned Dad's stress, my brother's potential as a streamer, how I was their only hope. It was the same script, just more desperate. I read it, then swiped it away. I'd spent years keeping them afloat, and they'd never once thanked me. Now, facing real consequences, they still expected me to fix it. I wasn't falling for it anymore. By late October, their silence was deafening. Mom's desperate texts had stopped. Dad's angry voicemails had dried up, and my brother hadn't sent a word since I gave him $1 for his streaming gear. The quiet felt strange, like the calm before a storm, but it also felt good. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in their demands. I could breathe, focus on my own life, and figure out what I wanted. One evening, Jason, Nathan's brother, called me over to their house for coffee. We sat in their kitchen, the same one where Linda had fed me homemade meals. Jason leaned forward, his usual playful grin replaced by something serious. I know a guy at a startup downtown, he said. They're looking for a software engineer. Better pay than your freelance gigs, less stress, and a real team. He slid a business card across the table, the name of a small tech company printed in bold. I'd been grinding as a freelancer for years, juggling deadlines and clients to cover my family's bills. The idea of a stable job with a higher salary felt like a door opening. I thanked him, tucking the card in my pocket, my mind already racing with possibilities. A few days later, my brother broke his silence with a text. Need $300 for a new phone. Mine's busted. No apology, no mention of the foreclosure mess they were in, just another demand. I stared at the message, my jaw tight. He hadn't learned a thing. I opened my banking app, sent him $1 and typed, "Figure it out." I hit send, a small smirk tugging at my lips. His reply was a single word. Seriously, I didn't respond. He could beg all he wanted, but I wasn't his ATM anymore. The next week, I met with the startup's hiring manager. Their office was a bright loft with exposed brick and humming laptops. The job was a senior developer role offering a salary 30% higher than my freelance income and actual benefits, health insurance, paid time off, things I'd never had. They liked my portfolio, especially the apps I'd built under tight deadlines. By the end of the interview, they offered me the position on the spot. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years, like I was finally building something for myself. Back at Nathan's place, I started spending more time with his family. One weekend, Richard roped me into helping him replace a radiator in his Mustang. We worked side by side in the garage, passing tools and swapping stories about bad first jobs. He didn't treat me like a guest, he treated me like I belonged there, grease stains and all. Another night, Linda invited me to a board game night. We played Scrabble, and Nathan laughed when I made up a word only for Linda to back me up, claiming it sounded real enough. Jason kept score, teasing everyone, but making sure I got extra points for creativity. Their warmth wrapped around me, filling a space I hadn't realized was empty. I started the new job in early November, diving into code bases and team meetings. The work was challenging but exciting, and my coworkers didn't expect me to carry their weight. I'd come home energized, not drained, and spend evenings with Nathan's family. One night, we carved pumpkins for Halloween, and Richard showed me how to make a lopsided jack-o'-lantern that still looked pretty cool. Linda insisted we save the seeds for roasting, and Jason challenged me to a carving contest, which I lost spectacularly. Every moment with them felt easy, like I was part of something real, not a transaction. My brother's text still sat unanswered in my phone. I didn't feel anger anymore, just indifference. He'd figure out how to buy his phone or he wouldn't. It wasn't my problem. I was done carrying them. With Nathan's family, I found a place where I didn't have to prove my worth. I could just be Hannah, laughing, learning, living. For the first time, I felt like I was home. Last weekend, I found a small gift on my desk. It was a leather-bound notebook, simple but elegant, with a note tucked inside. Linda's handwriting read, "For your next chapter. Thank you for being you." I ran my fingers over the cover, my throat tight. She'd left it at my apartment after a coffee visit, no fanfare, just a quiet gesture that meant everything. It was the kind of thoughtfulness my own family had never shown me. I heard through a mutual friend that Mom, Dad, and my brother had lost their house. The bank followed through on the foreclosure, and they'd moved into a cramped rental apartment across town. It wasn't a surprise they'd been drowning in debt long before I stopped helping. Still, knowing they were starting over in a smaller place hit me with a pang of guilt, quickly replaced by clarity. I'd done more than enough for years, pouring my savings into their lives, and they'd taken it for granted. Their new reality wasn't my burden to carry. The same friend mentioned my brother had taken a job as a cashier at Walmart. I could picture him behind the register, scanning groceries, probably grumbling about it. For years, he'd leaned on me to fund his streaming dreams, never lifting a finger to support himself. Now at 25, he was facing the real-world minimum wage, long shifts, no handouts. Part of me wondered if he'd learned anything, but I didn't dwell on it. His choices had led him there, just as mine were leading me somewhere new. I opened my phone one evening, scrolling through the old messages from Mom and Dad. Pleas, guilt trips, accusations, all of it felt like a lifetime ago. My finger hovered over their numbers, and I made a choice. One by one, I deleted their contacts, their texts, every trace of their demands. It wasn't anger driving me, it was peace. I didn't need their voices in my head anymore, telling me I owed them something. My brother's number went last, his unanswered texts about phones and streaming gear fading into nothing. I closed the app, my chest lighter than it had been in years. My new job at the startup was thriving. I spent my days coding features for a mobile app, collaborating with a team that valued my ideas. After work, I'd head to Nathan's place, where his family had become my own. One afternoon, Linda and I baked cookies in her kitchen, laughing when I burned the first batch. Richard showed me how to change a tire on my car patient even when I fumbled the lug nuts. Nathan and I took walks in their neighborhood planning a camping trip for the spring. These moments weren't grand, they were real, grounded in care and respect, not obligation. The notebook from Linda became my journal. I started writing in it, jotting down thoughts about my work, my life, and the people who made it better. Each entry felt like a step forward, a way to process everything I'd been through. I wrote about the years I'd spent trying to save my family, only to realize they'd never valued me. I wrote about finding a new family, not by blood, but by choice. Most of all, I wrote about the lesson that had changed everything. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was survival. Choosing who to let into your life, who to trust with your energy, was the key to living without regret. Looking back, I saw how my family's consequences were their own making. Mom and Dad lost their house because they'd relied on me instead of facing their problems. My brother was working a job he probably hated because he'd banked on me funding his dreams forever. Their story wasn't mine anymore. I'd found my own path, surrounded by people who saw me as more than a paycheck. Linda's gift, Nathan's support, Richard's patience. They showed me what family could be. This journey taught me something vital. Independence isn't just about standing on your own, it's about choosing relationships that lift you up, not drag you down. I'm grateful for every moment that brought me here, and I hope sharing this story resonates with you. If it does, please leave a comment with your thoughts. What would you have done in my shoes? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for listening all the way through. You're the reason I keep sharing.